What would you do if you woke up one morning and found a plant so tall outside your window that it disappeared into the clouds? Would you climb it? Well, once upon a time, in a tiny cottage at the edge of a meadow, there lived a boy who did exactly that. His name was Jack, and this is the story of how one handful of magical beans changed his life forever. Jack lived with his mother in that little cottage. It had a thatched roof that leaked when it rained, walls that let the wind whistle through, and a garden where only the bravest vegetables dared to grow. But even though they didn't have much, Jack and his mother had each other, and that, Jack always thought, was worth more than all the gold in the world. His mother would tell him stories by the fire at night, stories of faraway kingdoms, brave knights, and magical creatures. Jack loved those stories. He would close his eyes and imagine himself as the hero, going on grand adventures. But lately, things had become very hard. The crops had failed, the cupboards were empty, and their only cow, a gentle old creature named Milky White, had stopped giving milk. One evening, Jack's mother sat him down with tears in her eyes. "Jack, my dear boy," she said softly, "I'm afraid we have no choice. Tomorrow you must take Milky White to the market and sell her. It's the only way we can buy food." Jack felt his heart sink. Milky White had been with them for as long as he could remember, but he saw how worried his mother was, how tired she looked. So he nodded bravely. "I'll get the best price I can, Mother, I promise." But Jack had no idea that he would never make it to the market. The next morning, Jack set off down the dusty road with Milky White plodding along beside him. The sun was just peeking over the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Jack walked and walked. He was just thinking about how hungry he was when he noticed something strange. There, sitting on an old stone wall by the side of the road, was a woman he had never seen before. She was small and round, with silver hair that sparkled in the sunlight and eyes that twinkled like stars. She wore a patchwork cloak of every color you could imagine, purple and green and blue and gold, all sewn together like a quilt made of rainbows. "Good morning, young Jack," she called out cheerfully. Jack stopped in surprise. "How do you know my name?" The woman just smiled, a warm, knowing smile. "Oh, I know many things, dear boy. I know you're taking this lovely cow to market. I know your mother is worried. And I know," she leaned in closer, "that you have a brave heart even if you don't know it yet." Jack didn't know what to say. The woman reached into her cloak and pulled out a small leather pouch. "I have something for you, Jack, a trade. These for your cow." She opened the pouch and Jack peered inside. There, nestled in the soft fabric, were 5 beans. But these weren't ordinary beans. They shimmered with an inner light, one red as rubies, one blue as the summer sky, one green as emeralds, one purple as twilight, and one that glowed pure gold. "These are magic beans, Jack. Plant them tonight, and by morning, well, you'll see something you've never seen before." Before we find out what happens when Jack plants these mysterious beans, if you're enjoying this story, why not hit that subscribe button and ring the bell? That way you'll never miss a fairy tale. Now, back to our story. Now, Jack knew he should probably say no. He knew his mother was expecting coins, not beans. But there was something in the woman's kind eyes, something in the way those beans glowed. Before he knew it, Jack heard himself say, "All right, it's a deal." The woman clapped her hands with delight. She gave Milky White a gentle pat on the nose and whispered something in the cow's ear that made Milky White moo happily. Then, with a wink at Jack, she walked away down the road, humming a little tune. When Jack got home and showed his mother the beans, well, let's just say she was not as excited as the mysterious woman had been. Beans? She cried. You traded our only cow for beans? And in her frustration, she threw the beans right out the window into the garden. That night, Jack went to bed without any supper, feeling terrible. He had let his mother down. Those beans weren't magic. He had been tricked. He pulled his thin blanket up to his chin and fell into an uneasy sleep. But when Jack woke up the next morning, something was very, very different. His room was dark, not nighttime dark, but shadowy dark, as if something huge was blocking out the sun. Jack ran to the window, pressed his face against the glass, and gasped. There, right outside, was the most incredible thing he had ever seen, a beanstalk. But not just any beanstalk, this one was as thick as a house, with a trunk of twisted vines and enormous leaves the size of boats. It stretched up, through the clouds themselves, disappearing into the sky above. The beans had been magic after all. Jack's mother came running out and stared up at the impossible plant with her mouth hanging open. "Jack," she whispered, "what on earth?" But Jack wasn't listening. His heart was pounding with excitement. He thought of all his mother's stories about brave heroes going on adventures, and suddenly he knew exactly what he had to do. "Mother," he said, already reaching for the lowest vine, "I'm going to climb it." And climb he did. Jack climbed past birds' nests tucked into the curling vines. He climbed past butterflies with wings as big as kites. He climbed through wisps of cloud that felt like cool cotton candy on his skin. The higher he went, the more magical everything became. He saw flowers blooming on the vines that chimed like tiny bells when the wind blew. He spotted a family of squirrels with fur that shimmered silver and gold. Up and up and up, until finally Jack pulled himself up through the last layer of clouds and found himself somewhere impossible. Before him stretched a land made entirely of clouds. But these weren't normal clouds. They were solid, like fluffy white hills and valleys. And there in the distance, standing on the highest cloud of all, was an enormous castle. Its walls gleamed like pearls. Its towers stretched even higher into the sky, topped with flags that rippled in colors Jack had never seen before. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Jack had ever laid eyes on. And somewhere inside that castle, Jack could hear something, a deep, rumbling sound, almost like snoring. Jack crept closer to the castle, his heart beating like a drum. The front door was as tall as 10 houses stacked on top of each other, but it had been left open just a crack, enough for a small boy to squeeze through. Inside, everything was giant-sized. The chairs were like mountains. The tables were like fields. And the fireplace was big enough to park a whole fleet of carriages inside. Jack tiptoed through the enormous room, his footsteps echoing in the vast space, and then he saw them, the most wonderful treasures he could imagine. On one table sat a hen with feathers of pure white. But this was no ordinary hen. As Jack watched, she ruffled her feathers proudly and laid an egg made of solid gold. On another table rested a golden harp, its strings shimmering with magic. Even though no one was playing it, soft, beautiful music drifted from its strings, the most lovely melody Jack had ever heard. And there, slumped in the biggest armchair Jack had ever seen, was the giant himself. He was enormous, bigger than Jack's whole cottage, with a wild beard and hands the size of wagons. But as Jack looked closer, he noticed something surprising. The giant's face, even in sleep, looked sad. There were tear tracks down his enormous cheeks, and clutched in one massive hand was a tiny portrait, so small for him, but just the right size for Jack, of a smiling woman with kind eyes. Jack felt his heart squeeze. This giant wasn't a monster, he was lonely. Just then the giant stirred. His nose twitched, and in a voice like thunder rolling across the mountains, he rumbled, "Fee, fee, fo, fum." I smelled the breath of an Englishman. His enormous eyes snapped open. Jack froze. The giant's gaze swept across the room and landed directly on him. For a long, terrifying moment, neither of them moved. Then, to Jack's complete surprise, the giant spoke, not angrily, but with a voice full of wonder. "A visitor? I haven't had a visitor in... oh, it must be 100 years." The giant leaned down, peering at Jack with eyes as big as windows. "Aren't you frightened of me, little one?" Jack swallowed hard. A little bit, sir." The giant let out a long, slow sigh that ruffled Jack's hair like a warm breeze. "Everyone always is. That's why no one ever visits. That's why I'm all alone up here with only Henrietta and my harp for company." He gestured to the golden hen and the magical harp. "What's your name, small visitor?" "Jack, sir." "Jack." The giant smiled, a sad, gentle smile. Would you like to stay for dinner, Jack? I make a wonderful soup, and I would so love some company." And so, in the strangest turn of events, Jack found himself having dinner with a giant. The giant's name was Gregory. He told Jack that he had lived alone in the castle for longer than he could remember. His wife, the woman in the tiny portrait, had passed away long ago, and he had been lonely ever since. "People used to come up the beanstalk sometimes," Gregory said sadly, stirring his soup with a spoon the size of a canoe. "But they only ever came to steal from me. They'd grab what they could and run away. No one ever wanted to just talk." Jack thought about his mother's stories. In those tales, giants were always the villains, scary monsters to be defeated. But Gregory wasn't scary at all. He was kind. He was gentle. He was just lonely. Jack made a decision. "Gregory," he said, "I came up here looking for treasure. My mother and we don't have any money, and I thought maybe I could find something to help us." Gregory's face fell. "But," Jack continued quickly, "I don't want to steal from you. That wouldn't be right. You've been so kind to me." The giant stared at Jack for a long moment. Then slowly a smile spread across his enormous face. "Jack," he said, "do you know how long it's been since someone has shown me kindness? Since someone has treated me like a friend instead of a monster?" He reached over to where Henrietta the hen was perched and gently picked up one of her golden eggs. "Take this, please, not because you're taking it, but because I'm giving it to you as a gift from one friend to another. Come back and visit me whenever you like. The beanstalk will always bring you here." Jack felt tears prick his eyes. He had come looking for treasure, but he had found something far more valuable, a friend. Jack climbed back down the beanstalk with the golden egg tucked safely in his pocket and a heart full of joy. When he showed his mother the egg, she could hardly believe it. They took it to the village, where it fetched enough money to fix their cottage roof, fill their cupboards with food, and even buy some new chickens of their own. But the best part? Jack kept his promise to Gregory. Every week he would climb the beanstalk to visit his giant friend. They would have dinner together, and the magical harp would play beautiful music while they talked and laughed. Sometimes Jack's mother would send up a basket of her famous apple pie, giant-sized portions, of course, and Gregory would always say it was the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted. The villagers eventually learned about the gentle giant in the clouds, and little by little, others started climbing up to visit too. Gregory was never lonely again, and the beanstalk, it stood tall and proud beside Jack's cottage for years and years, a magical bridge between two worlds, and a reminder that the greatest treasures aren't always gold. Sometimes the greatest treasure is a friend, and so Jack and Gregory lived happily, with full hearts and warm friendship for the rest of their days. The end. Thank you so much for listening to today's fairy tale. I hope Jack and Gregory's story warmed your heart as much as it warmed mine. If you'd like to hear more magical stories, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next fairy tale. What should we tell next? Leave a calm wish in the comments and turn on notifications.